Italy Part 1 is the first episode of the 5th season of Everybody Loves Raymond. This is directed by Halvorson, and as always there will be spoilers from now as I go through the episode and share some thoughts. It's an absolutely delightful episode. It actually starts off picking up kind of where we left off at the end of the previous season, so this is a spoiler for what happens at the end of season 4. Debra is really annoyed at Robert for picking up his ex-wife's card. Previous episode, they were at a restaurant, they bumped into Robert's ex-wife, she gave him his number, which he scrumpled up and threw into a glass, and at the very end of the episode, he went back and picked up her phone number, and Debra is annoyed at him for doing this, particularly because he's back with Amy. And Frank and Marie then come into the house and they announce that they're going to Italy, to which Debra responds, "Forever?" which I loved. And Marie explains, we're all going to Italy for 2 weeks. Apparently she'd been putting money aside for 45 years and her birthday is upcoming, and what she wants to do for her birthday is treat everybody to a fortnight in Italy, the children as well, which is just the most wonderful thing. That is so, well, I was going to say it's so selfless. I suppose there is a selfish element because it's what she wants and she wants them to all be there. So I guess it is selfish technically, but also spending that much money on other people is pretty wonderful. And Marie said the whole family is going, to which Debra responded, "Me too," which says a lot about how Debra feels with her place in the family. She doesn't necessarily feel like family all of the time, but it was a very happy moment, and we cut to Italy, and the rest of the episode is in Italy. It is filmed at least in part in Rome. I would imagine all of the indoor scenes are at the studio. I could be wrong about that, but we do get to see some of Rome, which I'll talk about in a bit. Ray is not happy. He's the only one who doesn't really want to be there, and he just spends the episode moping around. Frank, however, is having a great time with Giorgio, who's played by Pierrino Mascarino. I apologise if I've mispronounced that. He's basically his Italian counterpart, and they bond over having wives who nag and complain all of the time. And Robert meets an attractive woman called Stefánia. She's played by Meneses. Again, I apologise if I've mispronounced that. And she works in the gelato shop. And Robert looks at her, and her father looks at Robert, and he's not very happy. Ray is then in the bath, and he's whinging about everything, the pressure of the water, everything else. The water goes everywhere. His relative then comes in and basically gives him a bath. At that point, I can understand Ray's whinging and moping around, because that would be a pretty tragic experience. Debra, however, is in very good spirits. Everybody's very happy except Ray. We then get a montage of everybody exploring Rome. Robert's gone off with Stefánia to see Rome, and they reach the Spanish Steps, and Ray did make me laugh. Marie said, "These are the Spanish Steps," and Ray responded, "Spanish? I knew we were walking too long," which amused me. I rather enjoyed it. And then Frank very sweetly takes hold of Marie and helps her up the Spanish Steps, and it's a really, really lovely moment. And then it got a little bit emotional because Ray is in bed with Frank, and Frank said something that I've often felt, but didn't know it was a common experience, but now that I think about it, it makes sense. He was talking about how now that he's lying in bed there, he never thought he would be in Italy, but there he is. And for me, oddly, I don't know why, and I'd love to know if anybody else has this experience, but when I travel, particularly to somewhere I've really, really wanted to go to, when I'm lying in bed at night at the end of the day, maybe it's because my thoughts are calming down and I have time to reflect, that's when I realise, oh my goodness, I'm lying in a bed in such and such. The last place I went to was Boston. And to realise that I'm in that place. I am going to sleep in that place. I guess maybe the whole lying in bed thing is partly because my thoughts are calming down, but also because spending the night there makes it seem all the more real. And Frank was just so relatable in that moment, and it was just so lovely how he never dreamed he would make it to Italy. And he's just so happy. He's so pleased. And it just goes to show that it may have taken 45 years, but they made it. Also, I do want to point out, Frank had initially said that, well, he said some harsh things about Marie once he found out she'd been hiding money from him for 45 years. But I do want to point out that if Marie had told him, maybe he'd talk her out of it, but also he might have helped her save. They might have got there sooner, but maybe this was the time they were meant to go. And it may have taken them a long time, but it shows that it was absolutely worth the wait. And then we end this episode with Robert and Stefánia. And they share a passionate moment, and Stefánia's father appears in the doorway. And it says, "To be continued." So we'll find out what happens in the next episode. I think I remember what happens next. I think I do. But it's been well over a decade since I saw this episode, so I'm not 100% confident that I remember it accurately. Looking forward to finding out, though. And needless to say, Italy Part 1 is a really lovely start to the 5th season of Everybody Loves Raymond.